Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Preeti Shirodkar, Associate Professor, Communication and Soft Skills, MET Institute of Management. Today, we will be talking about Indian regional linguistic identity. Some interesting facts. Language becomes an important marker of culture, whether in India or elsewhere. In the diasporic context, it becomes even more so. Secondly, when it comes to a region and a language, they may not necessarily be the same. And finally, knowing a language does not mean feeling an affinity towards it. Let us now set the context for the topic, Indian versus regional linguistic identity. There is no one single diaspora as a homogeneous entity. Just as within India itself there are many diversities and heterogeneities, in the diaspora also, Indians are internally differentiated in many ways. Based on social affiliations and positions they carry from India, Indian diasporic populations can be differentiated on varied counts: region, language, religion, caste, occupation, and class. Differences in diaspora on diverse axes further complicates the issue. These include variance in the old diaspora of the colonial time versus the new diaspora of the second half of the 20th century. Even in host countries like Malaysia and Singapore, there are different nomenclatures for these diasporas. They are called local and expat respectively. Then there is a question of the direct diaspora versus the double diaspora. Direct diaspora refers to going directly to another country. Double diaspora refers to migrating to one country before and then migrating to another country from there on. Furthermore, there is a question on whether migrants to Gulf can be called diasporics at all, given the various dynamics that are involved with diaspora in Gulf. Finally, the question is also about how does one describe a constant movement across borders of people who regularly move between Nepal and India and so on. There are certain important questions that we need to think about in this slide. The first one is whether and in what way are these affiliations interleaving and interfacing with each other. Secondly, how are the categories of region and language coexisting along with a pan-Indian identity? Furthermore, how can one distinguish between affiliations on the one hand and identities which are based on affiliations on the other, given that a group can have multiple identities simultaneously? These identities can be assumed, deployed, or given by others, and so too affiliations can be inherited or acquired. The final question which needs to be asked is, how should one identify and understand the greater diversities among Indian diasporic communities than even within India, against the backdrop of the fact that the historical time of immigration is important, the geopolitics of the destination country is important, its culture and society affects the diaspora, and its policies towards immigrants bring in new factors of differentiation. Finally, how should one identify and understand the greater diversities among Indian diasporic communities than even within India, given that the historical time of emigration changes, the geopolitics of the destination country matters, its culture and society affects the diasporics, and its policies towards immigration brings in new factors of differentiation. Recognizing diversities in the Indian diaspora is very important, given that, as Jairam says, uncritical use of the term Indian diaspora leads to a terminological conundrum, concealing the many fundamental diversities among the overseas Indians, making the plural Indian diasporas a more meaningful term than the singular, the Indian diaspora. Furthermore, there is a need to build the conceptual and theoretical infrastructure in the field. And finally, it is also a practical necessity given the importance that Government of India has attached to wooing the diaspora for national development. Let us consider the essentials of language and region. They are chief among structural and cultural diversities that inform the diaspora. Ganesh Devi says that according to the People's Linguistic Survey of India 2010, there are 780 living Indian languages. Based on these diverse languages, in 1956, the States Reorganization Act helped in the creation of 14 states and 7 union territories. Currently, this tally of states has increased to 29. These changes, however, have been based on the needs and demands of people, whether economic, developmental, or regional aspirations. The primary classification of states goes to show that language is extremely important in self-identity. It is a fairly common expected way of classifying regions in India. The northern region, which speaks Hindi and its dialects, the southern region, which comprises 4 states which speak Dravidian languages, the western, central and eastern regions which form smaller regional units, northeast with its 7 states forming yet another region, and parts of Odisha, Madhya Pradesh, Bihar, Chhattisgarh form a contiguous geographical space that can be called the tribal region of Middle India. Iravati Karve, however, begs to differ, and she classifies region based on the language family as well as kingship practices. Within a language-based region, there are further sub-regions. These have similar overall linguistic and regional cultures and ethos, but there are some distinctive features like dialect, cuisine, music, etc. Let us now consider language and region in the Indian diaspora. Not all languages and regions are represented equally in the Indian diaspora. The states with the highest emigration are Punjab, Gujarat, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu. In the colonial period, however, the regions of Bihar, East UP and Madras Presidency dominated the emigration. This variation is based on the needs and demands of the society and receiving countries and their policies that willy-nilly focused on particular kinds of migrants from specific regions. Furthermore, the geographical proximity of certain regions to certain countries resulted in migration. 2 of the largest regional or linguistic diasporas from India are from Punjab and Gujarat. These reflect both internal diversities while maintaining a strong regional linguistic profile. Let us first look at the Punjabi diaspora. Punjabis constitute a large and prominent part of the Indian diaspora, especially in North America and UK. As a proportion of Indian immigrants, Punjabis constitute 45% in the UK, of which 65% are Sikhs, 20% in Canada and 11% in USA. According to Judge, this diaspora is categorized by 2 situational markers of heterogeneity: the historical period of emigration and the geographical location of migrants. In North America, however, the colonial period and the post-independence period migrations were extremely distinct. In the colonial period, the migrations were both voluntary and indentured and contract labor, characterized by differences in occupational profile and power structures. The rise of nationalism in the colonial period and the discrimination faced by the host lands triggered loyalty to homeland of India, overriding other divisions. After 1947, however, the volume of migration increased and spread to destinations which widened considerably, and as a result, internal heterogeneities were also greater. Caste and religion are 2 major axes along which Punjabi diversity could be mapped. Because they have a variety of caste and religion are the 2 major axes along which Punjabi diversity could be mapped. 1, because they have a variety of castes, and 2, because the major religions which are followed by the Punjabis are Hinduism, Sikhism, Islam and Ad Dharma. While language is a powerful unifier for Punjabis, there are other differences which come into play. When under certain circumstances a group was identified as different on some other criterion, it was accused of betraying the language. This created a lot of tension among the Punjabis. Ironically, a transnational identity encompassing both Indian and Pakistani Punjabis was forged by taking recourse to the bond of language. During the 1970s, 80s and part of the 90s, Sikh separatism and militancy was expressed through the Khalistan movement, and this had its ripples on the Punjabi diaspora. It also resulted in long distance nationalism, which implied the providing of moral and monetary support. This created a rift between Sikh and Hindu Punjabis, but eventually it subsided and a common Punjabiyat reasserted itself. As against this, let us now look at the Gujarati diaspora. The Gujarati diaspora can be found in as many as 129 out of the 190 countries listed as sovereign nations by the United Nations. Gujaratis comprise around 33% of the Indian diaspora worldwide. In the US, there are 15 lakh Gujaratis, in the UK, 7 lakhs, followed by Canada, South Africa and New Zealand as prominent destinations. According to Tripathi, the Gujarati diaspora is facilitated by the state's long coastline. This has helped Gujaratis in forging business ties with people of other cultures. Composed broadly of 4 groups constituting the single, double and triple diasporas, the Gujaratis can be divided into 1. The 19th and early 20th century diaspora in East and South Africa. 2. Those who migrated from East Africa to UK in the 1970s following Idi Amin's hostile practices. 3. Those who later relocated to UK and North America. And 4. Immigrants directly from India in the second half of the 20th century, mainly those who were skilled professionals and entrepreneurs. What is important to note that the Gujarati diaspora is a well-bonded community. The region and language function as cementing factors for this community. This community includes both Hindus and Muslims. However, in the modern diasporics, Hindus and Muslims don't share the same amity because they are affected by communal tensions and hostilities in India. Among Hindus, caste is furthermore an internal divider, mainly in the context of marriage. In the community and social life, regional and linguistic bonds, however, define the Gujarati community. The Gujaratis have formed various associations such as the Gujarati Samaj and the Gujarati Cultural Society. The umbrella association is the Vishwa Gujarati Samaj in the US. Below this are varied caste associations, followed by subcaste associations, and finally Hindu religious associations. All these organizations maintain large independent memberships with some obvious overlaps. Their separate identities come to the fore when they are in competition with each other. However, they also cooperate with one another and participate in the activities of the umbrella organizations. The few pan-Hindu organizations mobilize around fewer issues and meet less frequently. Each level of organization, though, has religious, caste, national, linguistic and regional differences which become salient for particular purposes and for social networking for routine everyday activities. Let us now look at language maintenance, cultivation and shifts. A number of languages were spoken in various countries in the colonial Indian diaspora. Hindi was, however, the lingua franca. It evolved in location-specific ways and was given the term overseas Bhojpuri Hindi to distinguish it from dialects in India. However, the overseas Bhojpuri Hindi was also region-specific, and this process of development of a new dialect from existing dialects was called Koinization. Along this, there were Pidgin or Creole languages specific to the location which emerged for inter-ethnic contact. As against this, English was the language of prestige and was often in use along with the local Creole. Gradually, native languages got rarer in their usage. Despite this, however, OBH was maintained to varying degrees in different locations. If one goes to think about it, no single explanation can be given for why some locations maintained it better than others. Yet, people were very curious about the reasons and identified them as the length of time of the diaspora, English as the killer language, and the impact of industrialized and urbanized destinations. All these factors, however, have a great deal of exceptions. Indian diaspora, in spite of all this, has promoted its own language, but it is also engaged in literary works, publishing newspapers and journals. Furthermore, the Indian diaspora has been largely multilingual. In the post-independence era in UK, among the diaspora, Punjabi is the most common language, followed by Bengali and Gujarati. In the US, it is Hindi, Gujarati and Punjabi. In English-speaking countries, Indian diasporics often switch to English at home as well as outside. For second and subsequent generations, ancestral languages remain a symbol of identity rather than a vehicle of communication. Let us now look at linguistic cultural identity versus actual knowledge of the language. Although linguistic affiliation is a powerful mobilizer of diasporic identity, members of the diaspora, especially the second and later generations, may not be fluent in the language. As a result, survival and dynamics of home languages and the mother tongue in the diaspora is highly variable and may be dependent on multilingualism, heavy use of English, and absence of efforts and motivation. Interestingly, home languages survive with phrases and vocabulary related mainly to food, kinship, and religious and social rituals and ceremonies. According to Ganesh, among South African Tamils and Sri Lankan Tamils in Europe, mother tongue retention in the diaspora is influenced greatly by political factors. Sri Lankan Tamils preserve language through weekend schools, music, dance, and religion, and multicultural policies of the European countries. Among South African Tamils, on the other hand, the language has practically disappeared among the current generations. Language, according to Eisenlohr, needs to be distinguished on the basis of the language of everyday communication and allegiance to the ancestral language, which may not be in use at all, but which becomes a device in the creation of ethno-national communities. Among this, Mauritius is an unusual case of Indian diaspora, which is in majority in the country as it constitutes 2/3 of the population. Language there thus survives through state sanction and support. The policy is that of disciplinary multiculturalism, in which the state actively encourages the formation of ethno-linguistic communities built around the notion of Indian ancestral languages. After the Second World War, however, against the backdrop of the growth of religious communalism among Indians through activities of the Hindu Mahasabha and Arya Samaj and the crystallization of the categories of Hindus and Muslims, standardized Hindi as the ancestral language has become the rallying identity of Hindus. However, given that Tamil, Telugu and Marathi groups could not identify with Hindi, the government policy has had to give status of ancestral languages to these groups as well as to Urdus, which Muslims identify with. Let us now look at Indian versus regional linguistic identities. Indian identity is an important component of diasporic identity. It is the mode through which the diaspora presents itself to the host and is also perceived. Everyday social interaction within families and within the communities revolves around the regional linguistic identity. Social mixing, community festivals also take place within this group. Interestingly, Indian identity is also displayed on special occasions like the Independence Day or the Republic Day or Diwali by the diasporics. This comes to fore for business, trade and government related activities as well. Recently, Miss India contests in the diaspora have been an example of burgeoning nationalism. The immigrants, however, are identified as Indians or as Asians and not as Gujaratis or Punjabis. In situations where there is some hostility towards them, the diaspora clings to the comfort of a national identity and not their regional linguistic identities. Often, this identity is also thrust upon them by the land to which they have moved. Another kind of situation where nationalistic sentiments are espoused by diaspora involves crises or significant situations in the homeland, where emotion and sentiment are mobilized in support of the homeland. All in all, it can be said that linguistic identities are an important part of diasporic identity. They are, however, interactive and play with religion, culture, and space. Although these are not incompatible with each other, which of them predominates is a question that is always a guess point for one and all. Thank you.